Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game SO. Checking out a fun and exciting update video for you guys tonight because we're going to be talking about Paprium one more time before I review the game. Because in the original episode, I asked everyone if you wanted to see me open up the cartridge, take it apart, explain it on camera, and basically capture the entire thing for a review. It was a resounding yes in the comments. We're going to be taking a trip through the video game trap chateau known as Paprium, because honestly, Watermelon Games and SuperSEGA FPGA have a lot in common, and people pretty much identified Fonzie as a thin Alejandro. But all jokes aside, this has been absolutely a really wild ride, and honestly, I was very surprised to see, pleasantly so, that after I uploaded this video, only 18 hours later, the Watermelon Kickstarter page uploaded an update as to what was going on with Paprium. While it was the most non-update you could possibly imagine, it does mean people out there are paying attention, and it means if we keep poking the bear, or Fonzie in this instance, maybe we'll actually get a response and see this game come out at some point in time. I can't guarantee anything, but I have fun making these videos, so I figured why not do it. Because again, when Paprium was announced, people were very curious about it. It was supposed to be an incredible game, and I have now played it, and will be doing a review very shortly explaining what Paprium really is, but I'm still working on that. Wanted to get the update video out in the meantime. But when this game was first announced, it definitely looked like something people were very interested in, and from the comments on the previous video, I counted about 60 different people that said they paid over $150 for a cartridge off the original batch and never received absolutely anything. So if you figure maybe that's 10% of the people that actually didn't get something because they're just my commenters, and you start realizing just how few people actually got copies of Paprium back in the day. Some people ordered 3 copies and received 3 copies, some people ordered 1 and got absolutely nothing. It seems to be very random as to who actually got these things when they shipped in 2020. I was just one of the lucky few, and I figured I was sitting in my closet and I was doing some cleanup slot, and I did that video talking about $1 million missing and whether or not I should open the game. That's exactly what I'm going to be doing on camera today. I'm going to explain why it's not as easy to dump this as you would think, but I have now played Paprium from start to finish, and while you will have that long form review very shortly, I will say it works. It is slightly glitchy in spots, but it definitely is a full game that was realized and put onto cartridge and then shipped to a few people, and they definitely got some robot boobs that shoot lasers in there as well, which wasn't something I was really expecting because again, I haven't been paying much attention to Paprium whatsoever after that copy arrived at my house over 4 years ago. But I can at least tell you it is a real video game that you can play on real Sega Genesis hardware, or in my instance a Sega CDX, which gives me the capabilities of having that AI CPU partner because of the Sega CD built in. Now, a lot of the reasons why dumping this thing is not as straightforward as one would imagine is the Datenmeister, which technically is just a very clever marketing ploy, because once the epoxy was removed from some of the cartridges, it was found to just be off-the-shelf components. Nobody really designed a brand new custom chip for Paprium. They used things that already existed, which makes total sense. The Datenmeister just seemed to be a marketing thing, trying to convince people that there were custom chips inside of the cartridge. And while there are custom chips, they are not made by Watermelon Games. And you guys asked to see this thing opened up on camera so we could talk about it, so I'm doing exactly that. And there goes the resale value. But again, as I said in the previous video, I am not the type of person that buys games as an investment. I do not keep things sealed. I just had a bad taste in my mouth when it showed up, and I put it in my closet, and there it is sat for basically 5 years now. But the seal has been breached, the cartridge is out, so I can't undo what I just did there. And I'd say on a good day I probably just knocked out about $1,500 worth of perceived value on the cartridge, on an average day about $1,000. But I'm not here to have an expensive time, I'm here to have a good time, so let's open the damn thing and see what's going on inside. And again, only 18 hours after I published the video talking about $1 million being missing and no one receiving Paprium whatsoever outside of a select few, Watermelon Games put up an update, and my comments just absolutely exploded. Everyone just saying, hey, did you see they finally updated? But because it is behind the Kickstarter wall, you really couldn't tell much about what was going on. But I will say, it really isn't much of an update whatsoever. It said, hello everyone, we wish you a good year 2025. There is still time to do so. Thank you for your patience. There was not much news recently, albeit slow. Some progress is being made and more news will be issued later on. Best wishes, Watermelon Games. So apparently Fonzie has decided to not be a verbose gentleman in the future, because he loves to talk about Watermelon Games and everything he's doing, but when he issues an update to the actual Kickstarter page that took in $900,000, you got about 4 sentences, so I'm sure that took a long time. Probably didn't have to put his drink down to be able to write it. but this is the inside of a Paprium cartridge. You'll see here there is some fun silk screening, and on the back there really isn't a ton, but there are some interesting test points back there that we'll talk about in just a moment. But this is what you see when you open up a Paprium cartridge outside of a fresh package of the actual game in and of itself. But the real quote-unquote fun to see is around the front, but honestly there really isn't much to look at there either. Now, a lot of people's heat shield from all of the custom chips underneath that little metal shield there would fall off in transit, but mine still stuck to it. I honestly tried to peel it up, but it felt like it was giving me a lot of resistance, so I figured I should probably at least review the game before I just start completely dismantling this thing. And honestly, there is a glop top of epoxy underneath it, so unless you're going to try to eat that away with acetone or some sort of Dremel, all you would see is a big black mass underneath this heat shield. But underneath this is where all of the different chips that comprise what Paprium are, and they are protected, which is an issue with getting this completely running under emulation, the biggest chip being the SMT32. It has a lot of the test points basically obscured, so it becomes almost impossible to actually get into it and start dumping some of the content. So when people said dump Paprium, release a ROM, let everyone play it, you know full well if I could, I would sneakily do it, but I would do it for each and every one of you who didn't get the game when you paid for it, because you deserve to be able to play this because you parted with your cash. But it is not something that I have the technical expertise to do. Honestly, it would be something that would have to be sent out to a lab that specializes in these things, and you're probably talking about a 5-figure number just to get it done. And before you ask if I want to spearhead the effort to get that done, I do not want to touch it with a 10-foot pole. It is too hot for me to deal with. But you will see here from the GitHub page, when people were trying to reverse engineer this, apparently there is a file out there that has not been shared that does execute in MAME. Now, it is not perfect and it has absolutely no audio whatsoever, but it seems like some progress was made until they hit that brick wall of that SMT32 and the other chips inside just being too hard to actually access the data. And that is the reality of all of these chips. They have protected modes and they have different hardware features that can basically obscure any sort of attempts to actually dump the data or otherwise understand how they're functioning and try to reverse engineer it, because there is an FPGA chip on board, and it's not enough just to have the datasheet for the FPGA chip. You need the code that is actually written to it for it to function. So if you cannot access that code, if you can't get the bit stream, if you can't take a look under the hood to see what's going on, you really are kind of roadblocked in that respect. And that's kind of what you see here in Paprium. I'll switch from that MAME footage from GitHub over to the actual capture, and that is what really is stopping this from being 100% functional. People try, but it is just a massive project. It is the type of thing that an engineering lab, maybe at a university somewhere, or even a corporation that deals in engineering would be great at doing. But the fact that a few individuals are just poking and got as far as they did definitely is a nice bonus and benefit, and maybe one day you'll see the entirety of it done. But that is the thing, you can never count on anybody to finish up work because they do it in their spare time. If they feel like stopping working on it, you really can't complain because they didn't have to do it in the first place. Just before I get those comments down below asking why somebody doesn't finish something, remember, nothing is owed to you or me or anybody else. We just talk about it. And it was all down to these different project boards. We're basically using some voltage exploits to try to get the cartridge to basically puke up its data. There are different vulnerabilities in a lot of different bits of silicon, and you can look for those and find them and then try to exploit those chips. But the other problem is sometimes this can be destructive, and it's not like there's a ton of Paprium cartridges out there. The GitHub even talks about the quote-unquote Datemeister just being a bunch of off-the-shelf parts, because again, it wasn't something that was engineered by Watermelon Games in the way that you would think. They did not sit down and engineer their own silicon. They picked parts off the shelf and strung them together with code to be able to make Paprium, which is in and of itself not a small feat whatsoever. It is an impressive result, so clearly the engineering team at Watermelon knew what they were doing when it came to making this game. They are not faking it. The game does exist. The review is not going to be negative. It is the type of situation where they basically just failed to ship these things to anybody. You'll see here there is an Intel Max 10 FPGA on board that does have some vulnerabilities, but they are quite difficult to actually access. And there's also that SMT32 chip, which would also actually have to give up all of its data. And that's the one that is vulnerable to glitching attacks as far as voltages are concerned, but it seems like it hasn't just been finished up yet, and maybe will never be finished up. And as far as the flash data access, it is running through the FPGA as the traces, and because the FPGA is protected, you really can't access it too well whatsoever, which is just a little bit of an unfortunate result. This was made so that it could not be copied, and that makes total sense, but the fact that nobody actually got the damn game means it is frustrating to people. And there's so many different weird tricks that this cartridge employs, like the fake Paprium 8-bit game that shows up when you first boot up the game on its first power on. Every successive power on after this game will never show back up, so it definitely gets hidden somehow in hardware and basically is executing the ROM from a different memory address, avoiding actually booting this game up a second time. And when people decided to try to dump the game, what they actually got out on the first attempt as far as data was concerned was this little mini game. So clearly somebody at Watermelon in the engineering department thought that someone was going to try to extract the data out and left a little bit of a troll behind, which would be funny if everyone got the game, but kind of less funny because basically nobody did. But you guys asked me to update this video, and like I said, 18 hours after the first video went live, Watermelon Games finally wrote 3 sentences on Kickstarter after 8 months and $1 million. But $1 million is still missing. People don't have their games, and it seems like poking them moves the needle, so I'll keep doing it. But the game's open like you asked me to, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.